to pile on with the praise.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I piled on with praise yesterday, I think, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, first of all, let me thank the chairman of the Appropriations Committee. He's always had open doors, try to encourage people to be involved in the process. I think we all benefit by that, even though we may have differences of opinion about what goes in the budget. And I want to reiterate his thanks to the staff of the committee. They've always made themselves available and helped us draft some pretty complicated amendments at times that we'll consider in a few minutes. But, Mr. Speaker, even though there's some good things in this budget, in my view, in our view, this budget really doesn't go far enough. We are fortunate that since the last time we discussed budgetary issues, our economy has improved a little bit, and we've got some more flexibility in the budget as a result. But it doesn't go far enough. And let me give you a couple of examples where it doesn't. First, let's take the example of education. Sure, there are raises in this budget, and that's a good thing. We, on this side of the aisle, have pushed for that. We've got that. That is a good thing. But let's put it in context. State per pupil spending, even with this budget, is still lower than it was in 2009. And because our spending is lower, state spending on education is lower, who picks up the slack for that? Either your locality comes up with a little extra money, or some things happen in your school division that you don't like, higher class sizes, fewer teachers, etc. You know, I'm fortunate. I come from a district that's pretty wealthy. We usually pony up a little more money to make it work, but it's not always the case for other places. Teacher salaries now still are $7,500 below the national average. And in fact, if you are going to get close to the national average, you have to have a 10% to 15% pay increase for teachers in this budget. The failure to invest is showing up in some of the rankings that we have across the country. Education Week, just this last week, came out with their quality counts evaluation of 6 areas of educational policy and performance. Virginia, a couple years ago, ranked 4th nationally. We have now dropped to 12th. That's partly because we're not investing. Beyond that in education, how about kindergarten and pre-K? It's astounding to me that there are places in the Commonwealth of Virginia that do not have full-day kindergarten. And the alternative for parents in those jurisdictions are either not to have kindergarten or pay for that themselves. Mr. Speaker, this budget doesn't go far enough in terms of pre-K. In fact, it takes money out of pre-K. It reduces spending, and it doesn't give flexibility to the administration to move some of the monies around that we need to have available for where the waiting list is occurring. Mr. Speaker, this budget doesn't go far enough in dealing with tax preferences that independent analysis say do not work, and which represents massive transfers of Virginia taxpayer dollars to a small number of companies. I recall very distinctly last year when we had a colloquy on the floor, the chairman of the Appropriations Committee and myself, about was everything on the table in terms of how we're going to put together the next budget. The answer, of course, was yes, everything was on the table. But the tax preferences very quickly got kicked off the table. And instead, what we have is unlimited reform to the land preservation tax credit, which ironically works according to its intended purpose, while we leave tax preferences in place that don't work for their intended purpose. And what that means is less money that we can allocate for public safety, pre-K, teacher raises, and the like. You will hear others today talk a lot about how this budget doesn't go far enough. But the big piece of this, of course, is Medicaid. Sure, the House budget has adopted a modification of the governor's Healthy Virginia plan, but we don't know whether that complies with the federal waiver. And we've got a ways to go before we figure that one out. But even if it does, it doesn't go far enough. We're talking about 29,000 people that would be served by that program. To be sure, a good thing. But when you talk about Medicaid expansion, we're talking about billions of dollars in federal money. And we're talking about 400,000 Virginians, and we're talking about 30,000 jobs. That's why this budget doesn't go far enough. Mr. Speaker, if we had taken the Medicaid dollars, this is what money we would have freed up in this budget to spend on public safety, teacher salaries, employee raises. $57 million in indigent care. We would have been able to replace that with federal dollars. Instead, we have to spend state dollars to do it. $35 million for mental health assistance. $15 million for the Department of Corrections and the mental health services they provide to inmates. All could be replaced with federal dollars. That's $105 million. That's real money. And in the process, we could have helped a lot more people. Yes, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, this budget doesn't go far enough. But we have a chance to fix it today. You will see shortly a number of amendments and objections in this budget that we will speak to, which, if you adopt, will allow that budget to get to the next step. Because that's what we want. We want to get to the next step. We want a budget that all Virginians can be proud of. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.